Hi, today I'm going to be talking about a very important topic for the executives in small and mid-sized companies, and that is how to overcome the faults of not hiring excellent talent for their organizations, how they allow low performers to slip into the ranks of their organizations and drag down overall productivity and performance. Hi, I'm Voss Graham. I'm the organizational architect and CEO for Interactive Consulting Group in Memphis, Tennessee. I have been a successful entrepreneur for 36 years, helping larger companies from Fortune 500s all the way down to regional, fast-growing regional entrepreneurial companies. And I've seen and experienced a lot, and coupled with over 50 years of business experience now, and there's not too many things that I haven't seen or witnessed or experienced personally. So let me get into the important stuff today. How to make sure that we're having an effective hiring system by debunking 6 myths of how or why we don't do what we need to do in order to have effective hiring processes. The first myth is the job description is the most important document. Poppycock, in any number of other explicit words, but it's not the Holy Grail. A job description, in 90% of the cases that I've seen, is nothing more than activities for the job, and it has nothing to do with performance traits. Without the performance traits, anything goes. I mean, you can say, yeah, I can do that, and yeah, I can do that, or I've done that and I've done this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are doing the most effective work, nor do they have a high performance mentality that when adversity kicks in, they kick in with even better thoughts, higher quality thoughts, calmness under pressure, and these type of things. So the key here is to identify the traits that the job needs in order to be successful. By focusing on the job without the personalities and the biases and that sort of thing, what does the job need to perform at a high level? And that creates a dialogue between the HR group, the executives, and the hiring managers, and in some cases, the people who are actually in the position. So you get these folks together, and you have a dialogue, literally a dialogue, where everybody gets an opportunity to talk, and you come up with the traits. And sometimes it can be an assessment-based process, or it can be develop it through dialogue, which is a little bit longer process, but yet it is a successful process because you're focusing on the job and not the people in the job or the personalities that match you as the hiring manager. So that's the first thing. Job descriptions are not the most important documents for the hiring process, but it's more of a, all right, what does the job require? So what are the performance traits necessary for the job? Then you can use objective data from assessments to match the talent to the job. The greater the match, the more successful the person will be in the position because they will perform at excellent levels, high performance, and they will get things done every day, all day, even in the afternoons when a lot of people just burn out because they're totally mismatched for the job. So they've been utilizing their strengths all morning, and by the afternoon, they're worn out mentally and physically from being somebody who they're not, or being judged by their weaknesses versus their strengths. It wears on you. I've seen this occur way too often in organizations. So let's move on. Myth number 2. My hiring process is good enough is one of the things that I hear from both HR teams as well as executives. Well, that right there tells me that there's a problem in the house. Uh, as Jim Collins pointed out with his great book, Good to Great, when people say it's good enough, that's failure waiting to happen. Good enough is not great. You have to have great systems, great processes in order to have great talent. I mean, it's hand in hand. Come on. We've got to think in more positive terms. We need to find quality people, hire them. The quality people, or actually, let me start back. You got to have a quality process, which then finds the quality people, hires the quality people, or in the process, and then now you have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Why? It's because you're hiring high performers, top line talent. They're able to do things that other people cannot do. And therefore, you are much more successful long term with your organization. And that's the most important thing. The best companies that I work with, they find the right people for the right jobs, and they're very patient. They do not rush the process. They let it evolve by working a quality process, and they're dedicated to that. They want to make sure that they have more talent on board every year, and every time they fill a new position or an existing position, they want to upgrade it. That's the way to think. Upgrade. There was a book out years ago called Top Grading. It hasn't gained a lot of traction. It caused a lot of thoughts on, this is what we need to do. We need to constantly be upgrading our systems, our top grading. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're thinking that your present system is good enough, right there, that should be a red flag, a caution flag, whatever kind of flag that you feel is something that draws attention to a process. Well, that's what you need. You need to pay attention to it. Good is not good enough or great. All right. Myth number 3. We are unbiased in our hiring decisions. Well, sorry, that's not true. Everybody is biased. I have seen this over and over and over. When I say everybody, I mean, you really try to be objective, but unless you have objective data, you're going to still have some bias. And it can be a personal agenda, or it could be a group personal agenda. There's any number of factors that come into play under this bias mode. And that's why it is better to use objectivity, which is why the industry itself has taken on more of an analytical approach. Why? It's because the analytics is supposed to eliminate the emotional bias. And everybody's got it to some degree. It just depends on what it is and where the bias is. So, and if if you don't think you're biased, then why do you have any low performers on staff? There might be a bias. It could have been because the hiring manager didn't have the skills necessary to do the interviews properly, which is a common trait, which is another reason why the objective data that is available can be so useful and helpful ultimately in the hiring. I've also seen other HR teams or executives, they will use a bias and say that we can only hire certain people from selective or certain college degrees. So they go after a certain college or university, and that's the only one that they choose the talent from. Again, that may be a mistake, because there's talent in a lot of places, and there's arrogance in a lot of places, and there's Well, there's academics and then there's performance. And I don't mean to put academics down. I'm just saying, and academics is very, very good, very important. You have to stimulate the brain through study and research and continuous learning. Yet it's still applying what you know with common sense in the workplace that drives higher levels of performance. So it's good to have systems that match the talent to the job position uh, being utilized to hire somebody. This is incredibly important. I run into this way too often. There is a bias. I've seen hiring managers just go because they want to stop hiring. You know, the interviews. They feel like they're wasting their time, and they just hire somebody because they seem to be just like them, which might be a mistake if the job requires a different talent. All right, so myth number 4. We get so many resumes, we know we end up with a good pool of best candidates. Well, I hate to bust your bubble on this, but the facts are in this new age, electronically, which a lot of people, you know, their email, they get resumes in email and they start doing their research. Well, the big employment websites, URLs, they have people that just sit there at the breakfast table drinking their morning coffee and doing a couple of keystrokes and sending out hundreds to thousands of resumes to businesses just like yours every day. I mean, like every morning, they send out their resumes in order to try to find a new position or find somebody that will pay them more money, whether they deserve it or not. It's it's kind of like flood the market and see what happens, and that's not necessarily cool. And it also can be wasteful to the HR people who are trying to disseminate all this information and pass it around to the appropriate hiring managers. And you really don't know if it's true or not, because resumes, as we have learned through practical use, are marketing devices presented by potential employees, usually having been drafted by employment agencies who are getting very good at understanding the behavioral questions and what companies are actually looking for. So they help them script it and use just the right language to attract your attention. That doesn't necessarily mean the talent is talented, if you understand. They just happen to be very good at copywriting. So maybe you know, if you need a good copywriter, check out that resume. But if it's a different kind of position, well, then you have to really look objectively at the data. What are you looking for, and who do you know? What are the traits necessary for the job to be successful? By doing that, you can be successful. Now, I've got a few clients in our association has a few clients using our talent management plus system, which electronically accepts the applications. It has them fill out your specific application traits, any certifications that the people need, a copy of the resume, and then they can actually administer an assessment on the spot, so you can have data relative to this individual by positions. And that allows you to track the information electronically with a few keystrokes. You can sort through and find your best candidates like very fast by associating the job benchmark that has been created and compared against the talent data and it gives you a numeric match number. And the higher the match, the more qualified the candidate will be to be in line for an interview, to make sure that you're getting exactly what has filled out all this information. And the interview process can also be a little bit more sophisticated because it can be associated to the specific job traits and performance necessary for the job to be successful, or the individual to be successful within the job. So now you've got a double whammy. It's not the standard behavioral-based questions that these people have been coached on, but it's more of a performance trait validation interview question that uncovers the true individual relative to how talented are they for this particular position that you have to offer. That creates a very win-win scenario for both you and the potential employee, because they're going to be matched and be able to use their energy. They're going to be high energy all day, which allows for a accumulated high energy culture, which usually leads to even greater success. And then we have myth number 5 is the hiring process is a time-consuming money pit for resources. Now, yes, it can be in many, many cases, as I described. I mean, when you're filing resumes and applications all the time, that's a manual process. You've got resumes that come in at different points in time. You have to store those somewhere. And the law says you have to keep applications and all this associated data for 7 years. So that's a whole lot of backup information to be stored. So you've probably got file cabinets and warehouse space full of file cabinets for employees. The larger the organization, obviously. But this is something you have to think about. How can you control those costs? Maybe there's an electronic solution that eliminates the paper, which eliminates the need for filing cabinets, manual labor to file, and as well as space for all these filing cabinets to be administered. And yet you have full access to all the data through a few keystrokes at any management level that's been set up to review the data. So that's the and the setup, I will admit, the setup for these systems can grow a little bit. How it just depends on how sophisticated you want to get and how many job positions you actually possess. Obviously, the fewer the job positions, the less expense that is. So moving on to the 6th and final myth is hiring tools are limited to only the hiring process. That's very true for many assessments that are out there. Now, my clients love what we use because it's not just for hiring. We can take the same data and use it for effective communication development, best practices for the management in communicating with their direct teams, actually the creating of teams that are balanced and diverse, as well. And I'm talking about project teams to make sure that there's balance and not groupthink, some diversity so that you can get spirited dialogue in these process development or project development groups. You can also eliminate conflict by identifying opposites and behaviors, which is probably 75% of all conflict is due to behavioral mismatches. And that's a huge savings that these companies have, because they only have to do the assessments once, and then occasionally update them. But it makes a whole lot of sense. They're much more effective that way. And the hiring tools should be flexible in their use. It should not just be a one-shot item, because that makes it not as flexible and not as useful or cost effective. And I believe in cost effective. As an entrepreneur, I have to watch my resources also. Even though I use assessments, I've also helped my clients use them, and I always look for the best solutions for them. So with that said, that's busting those myths. I know it took a little bit longer today, but it is a Monday, and the hiring process is important, and sometimes we just have to take more time to review what it takes to have an effective hiring system. And I didn't even get into the mentioning of the multiple sciences that are available. I know my best clients, when they hire executives and managers, they use 4 assessments, or 4 assessment sciences in one tool, and what they get is a higher predictability rate. It moves up into the 90% zone, which is incredibly accurate. And my clients love that because they make quality hires, effective hires, and they get high performers, and they get the exact match to what they really want. And sometimes that's complex, particularly if you're creating a brand new position from scratch. So think about all these 6 myths. The job description is the most important document. Not. It's a talent and job position benchmark. Number 2, the hiring process my hiring process is good enough. Well, that's an antidote for I'm not concentrating on my hiring process, and I'm just taking anybody that semi-qualifies. Semi is not good. That's not a professional. And number 3 is we are unbiased in our hiring process, and that's just not so. Everybody is biased. You cannot help it. It's an emotional factor. It follows everybody around. Everybody has a emotional, personal agenda of some type. And we get so many resumes, we know we end up with a pool of best candidates. Not necessarily. It depends on where you're getting those applicants from. And then the hiring, number 5, is the hiring process is time-consuming, money pit for resources. And while that's true in some cases, if you're looking for better use of your systems and looking for long-term balance and cost effectiveness, then it's not as expensive as you felt. Or the initial setup may be a little bit more, but it could be staggered. And then finally, number 6, the hiring tools are limited to only the hiring process, and that's not necessarily a reality if you're using systems that are flexible, like our clients. And my best clients are using these, and we pull them up for multiple uses, and they appreciate that they have that data quickly and can solve issues within their organizations. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time. If you find that something that I spoke about today is extremely important, or you have a sense of urgency to do something about it, you can go to callvoss.com, schedule an appointment with me, and we will talk about it. We just want to talk about your situation. There is no selling going on. I don't have a sales pitch for you. That's the extent of the offer is for us to just have a dialogue and talk about what you want and where are you now, where you want to be, and what will it take to close that gap faster. And if, a lot of times I give the solutions to you and you can just do it yourself. Other times it requires a little bit of help. Or if you feel like it's too complex to do it by yourself and you need some help, that's what I'm here for. All right. With that, thank you very much. Remember, it's callvoss.com. That's call and V as in Victor, OSS.com. So thank you. Have a great day.